You're listening to the Copywriter On Call podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Gillis, copywriter, word magic maker, and owner of What Sarah Said. On this podcast, you'll feel empowered to show up online in a way that has you saying, "That's so me." Let's get started. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Copywriter On Call podcast, friends. I am your host, Sarah Gillis, and I am logging some on-call hours today with Felly to chat all about content repurposing. I am so excited. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So for people who don't know you yet, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, my name's Felly. I run a content repurposing agency where I literally consume content for a living and then create more content out of it. So, obviously, I love creating content. So, I've kind of created my favorite job ever. And like a little bit about me, I'm Canadian. I live in France with my husband. I got married a month ago, and man, the after effect of getting married, my brain was complete mush, and I was like, I don't have this giant thing looming over me anymore, and I just feel like free again. So that's like my end of the year is just like coasting because I've never been so stressed in my life.
Yeah, man. Well, congrats on the marriage. That's so exciting. And gosh, how fun it must be to live abroad. I'm here in South Dakota where it's like 32 degrees right now, and we're all like freezing in early fall, and we'll have those days where it'll be like 80 in a couple weeks, and then it'll be back to freezing. So it's like it's the messy middle right here. So I'm a little bit jealous of your abroad life. That sounds really wonderful.
Well, it's funny, I just flew back. I was in Philadelphia and New York over the weekend last week for a friend's wedding, and it was such nice weather. And then I've come here and there's a full-on thunderstorm, and I'm like, okay.
Welcome home.
Yeah, like, I live here.
Oh, fun. Okay, so I speak mostly to photographers, work mostly with photographers as a website copywriter. And so that's really where I want to start our conversation today is why is content repurposing so important for photographers, especially since they're in a visual industry?
Oh, I'm like, which way should we go first? Let's start with the counteracting the visual industry, because not everybody is a visual learner or a visual decision maker. So having some kind of written or even audio, like a podcast type of content out there, can help you get in front of and help you convert your audience that much better. Like, people might come for your absolutely beautiful photos, which they most likely are if you're in photography. Mm-hmm. But if they joined your email list and you talk about a deal you're doing, or you tell a story of a photo shoot you did, or like how someone arranged their surprise proposal through you, blah, 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 depending what kind of photography you do, that emotion that you can put into your writing might translate way more for someone potentially looking for a photographer than, say, like looking at photos of strangers. Like, they can see they like your style, but they might not be able to imagine themselves in that moment, where if you tell a story through words or through a podcast, maybe it will translate better for them. So having different types of content out there can really help you and your audience, like with your conversions, with your visibility, with it all.
Yeah, of course. I'm always like, people think that pictures can speak for themselves. And it's like, I love that. There are many like examples of art that have literally like stopped me in my tracks and made me think. But it's like, you want to control what that thinking is, right? Like, you want to be able to communicate what the emotion is at the core of that, or what the process was to create that image, right? The before, the after, the transformation. And that's where the words come in.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
And also it's just like meeting the people where they're at, right? Like, everyone has their different needs, especially when it comes to buying, but like in relationship building as well. And so to be able to connect with them in another way goes a long way.
Absolutely. So when it comes to content repurposing, so photographers who are thinking, okay, well, I have these gorgeous photos from this wedding day or this family session. It's about creating words that go along with it. But what are some key types of content that photographers overlook when it comes to repurposing?
I would say for a photographer, especially if most of the time you're local, right?
Mhm.
You're looking for that SEO to be showing up when people type like Dakota photographer, or
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, location photographer, right? And so having blog posts that have words, not just
Mhm.
pictures,
Yes.
will go so far for your business and your website, because every time you tell that photo, or you talk about a location you took the photos at, or like you tag the people whose wedding it was and then they share it with their friends, it is just like bumping you and bumping you and bumping you up on Google every single time. And it's really going to help you get in front of more and more people that you couldn't even imagine just by using social media or like word of mouth, um, regular channels.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think it's so important too to think about like from a local perspective, like educational type of content too.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are the locations I love to photograph, in the winter, or these are the places I recommend my clients shop for bridal accessories, or
Mm-hmm.
the places that I love to send people to, curate their style for their family session or whatever it is. And I think that there can be so much magic that is created not only for you, but like for the places that you're featuring in that blog post or in that social media caption or whatever it is. You can build that kind of symbiotic relationship where you're both benefiting from
Yeah.
that post. You can build that kind of street cred that your area and you're able to be an expert, but you're also showing some love to other small businesses or other areas and building that SEO too.
Definitely. And like collaborating with the people in your area, whether it's the venues, or if someone has like studios that you rent all the time, or like you said, like boutiques to shop at, things like that will also help you. Like you'll be able to help your community as a whole, right? Because it's like you can send it to them, they can send it to their clients, or they can feature you on their social medias as well, and like recommend you back, right? So it just keeps growing on itself.
Yeah. And beyond that, it just freaking feels good. Like it feels
Yeah.
good to show like the love to your local community and to really just expand your reach in that way. It's like a way of putting a big hug around your community in a way that feels organic, because it feels like, well, of course I would want to share recommendations for my clients. Of course I would want to be, seen as a thought leader in that area. And so why wouldn't I continue to show that love in that way?
Hmm.
I love that.
Definitely.
So tell me a little bit about video content. Obviously, video content is everywhere, and I want to kind of pick your brain as to how video content can be repurposed and how photographers can leverage that.
I mean, there's two ways that my agency creates video content, because we do short form video.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do like the full long form videos, but there's two ways. So either people are sending us long form videos, so it could be a video like this of
Mm-hmm.
a podcast interview, a video podcast, or it could be like if you were shooting and you set up your phone in the background to film your shoot, or any kind of things like that. If you have calls with like one-on-one consults with clients before, right? And of course with their permission. But so we'll take videos like that and we'll cut them up into shorter clips. So if they're talking head videos like this, where we're talking to the camera, then you're having more like educational type of style video.
Mm.
Where if it was more of like you were filming the background of your shoot and it's B-roll, we can cut those up into like short clips that can then just have text on screen. And it could be like back to what we were talking about for blog posts of like 5 places to book your next photo shoot outfit in South Dakota, or my top 3 websites for buying bridal accessories as a wedding photographer, right? And doing kind of clips, videos like that. It doesn't have to be your photos every time. It can be a video of you editing your photos. But at the same time, you can also, there's a whole lot of trending audios or like people who share the videos where there'll be like, okay, like 5 clips that are 2 seconds long of still photos, right? You know, and it moves to the sounds. So doing clips like that as well is another great way for photographers to get in front of people. I guess that was 3 styles of videos, but yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's so much, obviously, so many benefits for using video effectively, especially when it comes to reach and visibility. And it can be easier when you have a partner in creating it, right? Like, it's not always on you to be lip syncing or pointing at the screen or doing all the things. It can be as simple as taking video you already have in your arsenal and just trying to use it in a different way.
Yeah, no, I did the lip syncing thing, you know, the trending audios, like 2021, 2022. I did it.
Yeah.
And I don't do it anymore. Now I'm like, oh, I want to post a video. What's in my camera roll?
Yes, 100%. I feel like I played the game for a little bit. Like it was fun for a while. And then I felt like this isn't really me. This doesn't really feel like me. This is not really aligned with the image that I want to project, the brand that I have. And so it was more about, okay, well, what can I do differently? And how can I think about this differently? And so B-roll is like my fave. That's my favorite thing because like, even when I'm sitting here, like I could have my tripod sitting up over there and it's just me talking to my computer and that could be used for so many different things. And so I think it's just having the foresight and the intention to do that in regular moments of your work.
Yeah, like I just put my tripod in different places around the room, like move it around the room so you have all the different angles and it's like, okay, like come to the kitchen with me, I'm gonna make tea. And it's just like, just so I have all of these clips that I can then use. And I feel no shame in using the same clips because nobody's paying attention. Like nobody's paying that close of attention.
I think that's so true. Like I think we care so much more about that ourselves than people even notice or realize. And it's so freeing once you figure that out. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to recreate the wheel 700 times. I can just be me and use this video that I really like and just switch up the audio, switch up the call to action, switch up the hook, all of the things, and just show up in a way that feels like I can do that today. That feels great today. So when we're thinking about content repurposing, I know so many of my own clients think about it as taking something long form and turning it into short form content. So is there a way or an example you can share for photographers about how repurposing can go in the other direction, like from short form to more long form?
Oh, like I'm definitely the person who does like short form to long form more than long
cool.
form.
Love it. Share all the things.
Like if anyone's doing carousel posts, like again, we can use the like 5 boutique shops to shop in your town, right?
Yeah.
You have a carousel post and each slide is different boutiques in your town. That's taking the short form and making it long because you're going to turn it into a blog or into a podcast even, and you're going to expand instead of just saying like this shop, this shop, this shop, this shop. You're going to actually give the points of like why this shop, what I like about this shop, what I did or what I bought or what I found in this shop, right? I also am very famous this year for using my threads and like seeing based off of analytics like which threads are doing well and like what people are reacting to and turning those threads into podcast episodes. So
I love that so much.
If you want to test an idea first, if you're like, I think this is a super important topic, and then it reacts really well when you post about it one time or you make a story that's kind of like offhanded of like, oh, I was thinking about this today. Then it's like your sign, like you need to repurpose that. You need to make it into a carousel, a reel, a podcast, a blog, an email, right? Like it doesn't matter what form it started in. When you see the reaction of the people, like that's your sign to keep going with it.
Yeah. And I love that Threads is kind of like a playground for that. Like Threads has been so fun for me to just like throw random stuff up and be like, okay, what kind of cool things like come from this? Like if I have a reach or if I don't, it's like, cool, what did I learn this time? Like it feels like vintage Twitter, like back in the day when things felt really, really good over there. And it feels so fun to have a playground that you don't have to like polish yourself up to show up at. And I think that can be really freeing too, to say, okay, what can I test today? What kinds of ideas do I have that are just percolating? And what can I do to test these out and see how my audience feels about it? And I feel like Threads is the perfect place to do it.
Yes, I agree. I think Threads is, I don't know what they did with their algorithm, but they did it right. Like you get in front of the right people.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
I totally agree. So when you're thinking about content repurposing and making recommendations for photographers or for really anybody in a creative space, are there certain like tools or platforms that you really love, or any systems that you kind of recommend people put into place after they've created content to, remind them to repurpose or to help make that process a little more streamlined?
I mean, I think it's really personal to how you create content. I do recommend that everyone has some kind of content hub. Like me, myself, I use Airtable. So everything is just like, I have it organized by content type. So like all the podcasts are in one, all the blogs are in one, all the emails are in one. But some people have it all in one place and then just have like categories, and it depends on the platform you're using, right?
Sure.
So I recommend having some kind of base like that you can filter. Like I'll have what offer it was for, so I can filter through and see like, okay, I only want to talk about the remix, so I'm gonna like look for the content that talks about the remix and like filter out the content that talks about other things. But that being said, it's like once you have that, what you're and like tools, like it depends what platforms you're creating for. It depends how you like to create. Like me, myself, I like to batch create. I like to sit down and like write all my emails at once and schedule them versus like once a week. I'm like, I don't know if I have an answer for tools. I'm not someone that uses AI as much as I like sometimes go, maybe I should get into it. I haven't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe one day, but not yet.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I feel like one of the first ways I tiptoed into AI was like, okay, this caption or this thread performed really well. Can you turn it into a blog post outline for me? Or like, give me an idea of how I can expand this. And just getting me started was like magic. Like just having the impulse to say, okay, try this and see if you can come up with anything. And then being like, okay, well, that doesn't really fit, but like this part of it is really interesting. Let me dive in and see how that, works. That's been really cool for me to try and see, okay, what can AI do to help me figure out, like, get me out of my own head and out of my own way. And so that's been kind of a cool thing for me. I've also experienced like feeding it a paragraph of a blog post and saying like, is there like a good hot take or a good, like, what's the main takeaway here? And trying to boil it down to like the very simple pieces to like repurpose on Threads. So like going back and forth. And it's like, it's not quite there with that prompt yet, but I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to like get AI to understand what I'm going for. But I feel like the short form to long form piece is something that AI can really help with, at least when it comes to an outline of creating like a plan of attack. And even if all parts of that plan don't feel aligned with you, getting you started can sometimes be the key there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I like that. And that's where I'm like, I feel like I haven't found a way to use it because I don't have troubles with getting started. I have troubles with finishing. I got a lot of ideas.
I love it.
It's like, finish it.
Yes, I love it. I am like the classic writer who's like, I'll write the introduction paragraph later and just jumps right into the meat of it. And then when I'm like, okay, well, I actually can't just have intro goes here at the beginning of the blog post. I'm like, what in the heck do I even say? I was that girl like in literature class who would like write my thesis statement and then be just like, whatever, up here eventually, and then write the whole dang paper and go back to the beginning and just sit there and stare at the screen and be like, what do I say? The introduction is so important. And so I just didn't want to fumble the bag. But I think it's really fun to see how different people use AI. It's fascinating to me that like some people are like, absolutely not, it's going to take my job, and other people are like, I like to play, it's like a playground, it's fine. And then there's people in the middle. So it's so fun to talk to other creatives about it.
Yeah, no, like my husband is constantly like asking AI, like, what do I do for this? What do I do for that? And I'm just like, I ask Google. Like, I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
like, cause like I'm like living in France, like doing paperwork and all of that. And he's just like, I asked AI, like, if you're on this visa, how do you do this? What's the next step? And I'm just like, yeah, but like that's what Google is. Like, I don't get why you're asking AI instead of Google.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, but like AI analyzes and da 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 da, you know. And I'm just like, I get it, but like I don't go there.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet that I'm like, oh, AI can answer this question for me. I'm still very much attached to Google.
Yeah. I think that's like, at least speaking as a millennial, like that's the generation I was raised in. We're like the Googlers. We Google stuff all the time. And so like the idea of turning somewhere else, especially for like government paperwork, like I want to know from the government, guys. I don't want to know what ChatGPT thinks. You know what I mean?
But I get the ChatGPT because the government is so much jargon, and like this is like French jargon. So for me, it's like double complication.
Yeah, non-starter. No, thank you.
So I'm like, yeah, like there was one point when we were doing like the marriage certificate, and I literally just like put the sentences into ChatGPT, and I was like, can you make this like regular people language? Like, I don't know what they want from me.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. Oh man. Okay. So I would love to know, you talked a little bit about like testing out ideas, especially on threads, but like how can business owners track the success of content and then repurpose it and then measure its impact after that?
First and foremost is analytics. Looking at the analytics, so like podcasting, great, like it puts it in order of popularity. Same for like Instagram. I think we're still not there with threads yet. Like, it'll tell me the amount of views you get, and you can obviously see the comments you get, but I don't think there's a place that you can go on threads and say like, what's my most popular post yet.
Right.
But if you have a post that pops up, you're going to remember it.
Yeah, for sure.
I can very distinctly remember which are my most popular posts in my head, you know?
Yeah.
But if you have some kind of, again, like if you have a content tracker, content hub, like an Airtable base, like we were talking about before, you can put in like notes or some kind of section that you're like, this performed well, this got a lot of comments, like come back to this one, like mark it for repurposing or potential repurposing. But also beyond just like people's reactions, because there's a couple things that feed into whether it pops off or not. You can like still mark things for repurposing or to like try again. If you yourself think that it didn't take off the way it should have, then it's a good reason to like try a different angle with it. So if you like went for maybe a sales post more where you were like, this is the benefit of it. It's like maybe people aren't there yet that they know they need it, and you can go back and bring it of like more awareness of like, do you have this problem? Like rephrase the question, rephrase the topic, right?
Yeah.
So how do you measure the impact? I'm like, I have I can use this as an example. I have an email that I wrote, I want to say 5 years ago. No, it can't be 5 years ago. 3 years ago, when I first launched the version that I do now of a retainer for content repurposing. And I have repurposed that probably like 6 or 7 times now.
Nice.
Into a thread, into more emails, like rewrote the email, into reels a couple times, because it answers a very common question. And I can see every time I send that email or create a reel, I either get an inquiry or make a sale. So it's like that's
Something's
like
working
my own
there.
measured reach. I'm like, I'd have to like put numbers in to like see the impact of it, right? But like,
Yeah.
that's like the one off the top of my head that I can say, like, I can see the impact of repurposing this one post again and again, because I know it always carries weight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think if you were looking for overall impact of repurposing, then you would be looking more towards like your growth, your numbers, and also like if you have it on your on your like application form, or like what's the other one we do, like testimonial form, like after they've purchased, of like, where did you find me, like what was there a piece of content that helped you convert, like those are things to track as well, to see like if one of your platforms is all repurposing, like are people converting from that content, or is that platform growing, are there new eyes coming to it, right? So it's like content, I'm like, there's so many moving pieces that I'm like, is there one place to look for results, or it depends on what your goal is for what you're going to look at, right? Like, are you looking at analytics? Are you looking at comments? Are you looking at feedback?
Yeah. I like thinking about impact in a variety of ways too. Like it could be comment based, it could be inquiry based, it could be like DMs, like what elicits that type of a response, and what kind of response really motivates people to convert, whether it's buying now or nurturing them to buy later, right? Like, so it's not necessarily like an immediate, I can make this, I can, measure this impact right now. It can be a longer game too. And I love the idea of using analytics. Like I'll be honest, I was so afraid of analytics forever, because I was like, numbers and me don't really get along. I don't really like the whole mathy part of life. And I was also nervous that like if I came face to face with my analytics, I would see that things that I was creating weren't resonating. And so that fear is like, it held me back for a while. But having someone tell me like, it's just information and you can choose to do what it is, like do with it what it is. You can choose to let it mean something or not. It's just information. That was really freeing for me to like understand, okay, analytics can be a tool. It can be information that helps me, in future decision making, or it can just be something that I disregard. Like if I love the way this post sounded, and even though it didn't generate the most interactions or whatever metric you want to throw here, like if it felt aligned to me and didn't pop off, cool, that's fine. Like it still is a
good.
worthwhile piece of content. It's still good. And so I think there's a lot of fear. I know I'm not alone in the fear basis around analytics and trying to think, okay, well, if I didn't perform, then if this didn't pop off, then what am I doing here? And why am I creating content? It's like, don't get in that space. Just continue doing you and use analytics as information, not as like the be all end all decision maker, for sure.
Yeah, and that you just made me think of a conversation I had, because I have a friend online who's like in the data space, like data's her thing. And you hear so many people who are like, use your data to make decisions, data backed decisions, blah, blah, blah. And I'm a marketer. And I am a creative marketer, not a numbers marketer. Like there's the two sides to people who work in marketing. And so like a long time I felt like kind of a fraud, because it's like, oh, like what's the data? What's the data? And I'm like, oh, data, yeah. Numbers, right. And then it's like, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing what people are reacting to. And like, that's my approach. It's like, what's lighting me up if it's my own content, or like what's lighting your audience up if it's like not my content. And then when I was talking to this girl who's like professional data marketer, and she was like, well, there's 3 types of data, and I can't remember them right now, what she called them, but I know one of them was like the analytics, what's happening on your Google analytics, what's happening in your Instagram analytics. The other one is what people are saying. And I was like, okay, so it's still data.
I love that so much.
Content, to go through my comments, and like, you just made me feel so validated.
So much better.
Data is not just numbers, right? Like, there is more to data than what the analytic report is saying.
Oh, I love that so much. That makes me feel like so like warm and
Yeah.
fuzzy inside, because it's like, that's my vibe. I'm on the qualitative side. All the numbers are fine and they're a great kind of information, but like I pay attention to the qualitative stuff, the actual word stuff, because obviously I'm a words person, but like it feels better too. It feels like something I can get a grasp on. Whereas like, okay, I'm looking at a bunch of numbers and like trends and blah. It's like, ugh, my eyes fog over and I get lost.
Yeah,
So
I'm like,
I
does
totally
anyone
appreciate
actually
it.
find that interesting?
Preach, preach. Okay, so you mentioned your retainers, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So one of your offers is to help business owners on retainer to repurpose their content. And so one of my favorite questions to ask anybody who's a writer is about maintaining consistency and brand voice when you're working with the same client over time.
Yeah, so my answer is the same every single time with this, and that is that we're using their words. Because we're repurposing content, like I'm not creating, that's not right. I'm not reinventing anything for you. I'm taking your words and I'm repeating them in a different way or from a different angle, right? Like we said before, like if you did a reel that was like 5 boutiques to work with in South Dakota, and then we turn that reel into a blog post, well, it's going to go from being like the short, catchy lead generation to the angle of more educational, right? And we're trying to convey a message now of like, why is this important to learn? Not just like, oh, I'm in South Dakota. What are you looking at? Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not changing your words. I'm still sharing the same 5 places that you mentioned, but we're changing the messaging almost of like, this is interesting to like, this is important as they go through your customer, client, buyer's journey. But yeah, so when it comes to repurposing content, when it comes to working with people on retainer and doing done for you work, it's all about taking your voice and taking your words and just repeating them again and again.
Yeah, yeah. I love the idea behind it. Like the motivation is the same, right? Like you're using someone's words and just hitting a different angle or touching on it a little bit differently, whether it's more in depth or less in depth, whether it's, hitting an emotional part of the buyer journey or more of a logical part. Like all of these things are really central to the customer journey, but it can all have the same part of your voice show up, right? Because it's at the very core, it's your words. I think that that's something I tell my clients a lot is like, I don't necessarily take all of the words from your questionnaire, for instance, and plop them on your website. That not every idea makes great website copy, but there are pieces and parts that I can extract from your questionnaire or the social media captions that you have been, posting recently, or even testimonials that people are writing about you, and distill that down and say, okay, well, I've seen so many people say that you're efficient or that you're, caring or whatever it is. And it's like, how can I get that emotion that you're, creating, that emotional response? How can I get that across in your copy? And that is the thing that kind of, I think people don't understand necessarily about brand voice, is that it's not necessarily limited to just using the exact words you said here in this exact order, in this exact way. It's about thinking about the emotional response that those words cause, or thinking about the intent behind those words and using that as a way of repurposing.
Yeah, definitely. And like I see that more when we're repurposing someone's older content and maybe their messaging has changed. So they'll give us like their new messaging. And it's a matter of like taking the old content, whether it was the story that they used or the vision they're trying to convey, and then putting their new messaging into it or the new offer into it. Because like we don't really change our missions,
Yeah.
like I have been saying some of the same things for 5 years that I've been in business. My business itself has changed a lot. I started as a VA, right? So it's like what I do and who I work with, that's all changed. But like what I believe is still the same at its foundation. So I can take 2019 content and I can apply 2024's messaging and it'll still land and it'll still be
Mm.
on brand.
I love that. Yeah, for sure. There's not necessarily like an expiration date on your content when it comes to that. Like used to offer VIP days back in the day. And so a lot of my content was about how great the VIP day is. And I don't do those anymore. It's not creatively like fulfilling for me anymore. And it feels a lot of pressure around like, okay, I'm going to be creative today because I said I would. And so, but that doesn't mean that all of that VIP day content is like just, scrap it. I need to throw it away. It's just about, okay, what do I accomplish for a client in that structure or in that container that I still accomplish for them now in a different container? It's about thinking about it differently.
If what's being shared in this episode is inspiring you to bring more of your personality into how you show up online, I've got a quiz for you. Head over to whatsarasaid.com/quiz and discover your brand voice type so that you can feel confident in standing out through your words. This quiz will help you uncover the brand voice that's already within you, so your words can finally have you and your dream clients saying, "That's so me." Knowing your brand voice type means you'll have full permission to ditch the proper and polite copy if your authentic voice is actually quirky and fun. Your brand voice is what I call word magic, because honing it creates literal magic for you and your dream clients. Plus, after your brand voice type is revealed, you'll get access to 5 free social media prompts to help you share your voice right away. So what are you waiting for? Take this fun quiz now at whatsarasaid.com/quiz.
I love that. Okay, so selfishly, I'm super interested in the next question. So I want to know all the things about the Remix service. So tell me all about it and what type of a business owner is a good fit for this service.
Ooh. So for those of you who don't know, the Remix is I guess I never know like what category of offer it falls into. It's not a VIP day. It's not a retainer. It's not a project really. But essentially, you book us to create 100 custom content ideas using 10 of your existing content pieces. And we turn that around in 7 days. So within a week, you're going to have a Airtable base with 100 content prompts ready to go. Who it's for is like really divided. And it's funny because, when you launch something, you have someone in your head and it ended up like going the other direction. So we work with really prominently 2 people, but there is kind of like a third contender coming in. And the first 2 is the solopreneur, the person who's not ready to hire someone to do done for you, like work for their business, but they need a break mentally or time-wise, or they just want to like do a big content push and they need the ideas. They need like it mapped out so that they can just go in and create all the content without having to like think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
The other side is that we work with entrepreneurs that already have a team. So they already have someone who can create content for them, but they're bottlenecking their team by not sending over ideas or by being stumped on like what kind of content to create, what direction to go in. Like both times the people who come to us, they generally have a strategy for their marketing, but it's that the creation is being blocked somewhere. And now we have this like third person coming out of the woodworks, and they are someone who's going into a launch. And so again, they're like, I want to create mass amounts of content, and maybe they've already launched the offer before. Maybe they only have the sales page and a lead magnet, but either way, like they'll send us what they have and we get to work. But yeah, those are like the three ideal clients that we work with on the Remix.
Okay, well, I'm obsessed because I'm like 2 of those. I love that so much. I don't have a team yet, but I can see how like freeing it would be to like bring in a team like yours and just relieve that pressure and help the idea sharing to take place. But as a solopreneur myself, it's like, okay, there are so many times when I'm like, girl, I don't have any more to give when it comes to the content in my head, the content creation machine that I feel like I am sometimes, especially during launch. And it's like, okay, well, if I could have a partner in that, like it doesn't feel like it's all on me. And it's using my own content in a different way, bless, sign me up. I love that so much. That's awesome. How can people get in your world? Where do you direct people to learn from you? Are there resources that you have available for free? Are you an emailer? What are the things that you can share with people to help them find you online?
I would say find me on Threads. It's my most popular. It's Felly Day on all the platforms, but like Threads is first.
Love it.
I do have a private podcast for anyone that is not ready to hire help for repurposing and wants to like DIY it, or wants to just like be like, I don't get it. Like, what do you mean repurposing? You know, like that
Yes.
one's for you. It's called Turn One into 10 because I walk you through how to turn one piece of content into 10 over a 5-part series. I originally set it up thinking it would be like 5 days, but everyone just binges it. So there's that.
That's so fun.
And then if you want to continue like learning from me, there's the actual podcast, which is the Unprofessional Entrepreneur, and that's on all the streaming platforms.
I love it. The Unprofessional Entrepreneur. I mean, I got to hear the backstory about that after we stop recording, because I'm like, girl, I feel like that most days. So let's talk about that. But thank you so much for joining me. I've so enjoyed our chat and have learned so much from you, even as like a writer, somebody I'd call myself as a writer, like about how we can use our content to like really extract all the good things out of it and make it work harder for us. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Everybody, I'll have links for you in the show notes. I'm sending a big virtual hug to Felly for sharing her expertise. If you love listening to this episode, please take the time to share it with a friend or leave a review on your favorite podcast player. And as always, thanks for listening. And until next time, this is your Copywriter on Call signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Copywriter on Call podcast. If this episode has you feeling all sorts of inspired to show up as yourself online, click that subscribe button so you don't miss my stories or practical advice to help you express your quirky, vulnerable, and authentic self online. Chat soon.